In October 2022, 21-year-old Phoebe Plummer from London and 20-year-old Anna Holland from Newcastle made headlines. Public reactions to this ultimate act of despair of young people, deeply worried about their future, shocked me more than the act itself. No one seemed to care about what they were talking about.
What is worth more, art or life? Is it worth more than food? Worth more than justice? Are you more concerned about the protection of a painting or the protection of our planet and people? The cost of living crisis is part of the cost of oil crisis. Fuel is unaffordable to millions of cold, hungry families. They can't even afford to heat a tin of soup.
In times of global pandemic and war, in times in which it became clear things are not going to be same ever again, cognitive dissonance always plays its best. For youth, the only possible remedy for anxiety was action. In times of fake prophets and world tumbling down, everyone was swearing into the future.
Раз, два, три.
No one was prepared to listen to it.
It's also become clear over the last couple of years that we haven't done enough to prevent these tools from being used for harm as well. And that goes for fake news, foreign interference in elections, and developers misusing people's information. We didn't take a broad enough view of our responsibility, and that was a mistake, and I'm sorry for it.
Next Generation EU. Who are they? And what is the zeitgeist during the Zeitenwende? Let's start from the beginning and in a way we were taught in schools, defining things and asking the ones older and with authority.
Much depends on what we mean by politics. If politics is about elections, parties, parliaments, politicians, governments, then the survey evidence that's accumulating is that in many actually existing monitory democracies, young people are disaffected. They don't join parties, they have limited respect for politicians, they curse governments, and they hate politics. But if politics has other meanings. If politics means engagement in public life, then we see signs of young people who are involved in climate strikes, who are involved in organizations like Amnesty, Greenpeace, in direct actions like Extinction Rebellion, #MeToo, Black Lives Matter. If politics is about engagement in public life, trying to effect power reversals through public action, through public assembly, helped by online engagement, then there's plenty of young people's involvement. But there's another sense, a third sense of politics. It's the slogan of the 1960s that the personal is political, a great feminist principle, elaborated by Michel Foucault. The idea that there is a politics of everyday life, that who gets what, when, and how in everyday life can be determined by you by changing the way language is used, by thinking differently about bodies and choice, the food we eat, the way we dress. These are political matters in this third sense. And it's this sphere, I think, in which we're witnessing the flourishing, not the exiting from the flourishing of youth politics. The question is, how does this get translated into public life and into electoral politics? It's one of the great questions that those who worry about young people's disaffection with politics are centrally concerned with. Does this involve lowering the voting age to at least 16 or younger? This is one of the questions. In my own view, in my own work, I've tried to say that we should widen the understanding of politics in actually existing democracies, because seen in this way, youth turnout, where voting is not compulsory, is low. It's often extremely low, but public engagement
is high.
There are signs, and certainly in the politics of everyday life, young people are centrally concerned with.
In the name of the youth and in the name of personal is political, I've met the most popular TikTok influencer in Croatia and, to begin with, embarrassed myself.
I'm begging you, so put your loving hand out, baby. I'm begging you. Put your loving hand out, darling.
Bam, bam.
Riding high.
Bam, bam. Dobro, ipak znam nešto. To put things in perspective, Marko Kukurin has 500,000 followers on TikTok. Ruling party in Croatia, part of EPP, has around 60,000 on Facebook. Marko talked openly about his sexuality, death of his mother, hate speech online, his life in poverty. He participated also in European Parliament campaigns. He thinks youth, which gets all of their news online, mainly on TikTok, needs authenticity and sincerity, and they will respond. There's nothing wrong to show how vulnerable you are, he says to me. On my TikTok, I'm showing there's nothing to be ashamed of, from shedding a tear or having a bad day. It's okay to speak that you've talked to psychologists. All of my followers know that. Actually, it's kind of beautiful that this new generation openly shows its emotions.
As we heard and as we know, the European elections are coming. They're right behind the corner. Just in 2024, we have elections for the new European Parliament. We as a generation, we're already a very active generation, but we don't always find our ways in the formal seats. I know this hemicycle where we're right now, a fraction of the people who are seated right where you are, only a fraction of those are young like us. And for us to have a youth wave, for us to see young people like us, for us to see people who believe in the same things that we are and believe in and stand behind, for us to see people we can relate to seated where we are right now in this hemicycle, we need a youth wave. And we need political parties, we need them to prioritize youth in their campaigns. We need young people to be heard, we need young people involved in the campaigns, and we need politicians to talk about the things we care about in ways that we can relate to. Because that's the only way to get our voices heard, and if that doesn't happen, then we lose an entire generation.
I think youth are recognized, at least by the institutions, as, an important electorate. in my opinion, they're not recognized by political parties and by politicians as an electorate that they need to, address specifically, talk about their issues and so on. And I think that's a challenge because, as much as we can do as civil society engagement and mobilizing young people for participating in elections, if the politicians, if the ones that they have to vote for, they're not addressing them or they don't speak directly to them, then it's like, a dialogue of people who don't speak the same language.
Our social fabric is being challenged basically because of the war now in Ukraine and before, because of disinformation and trust in politics and in politicians. You are one of, I think, youngest MPs, even though you're 30, am I right?
Yes, exactly.
Of the youngest MPs in European Parliament. How important it is to rejuvenate, let's say, European politics?
I think it's very important. As you said, I'm one of 10 members of parliament that is under 30. Well, now I'm 30, so I'm even cutting this threshold. But we have so many more people that are younger than me, right? My niece, for example, she turned 22 this year. She is having a very different life at the moment than I do. And I'm the one that is proposed to represent her and others in that age. And I think it's not completely possible if you miss out this perspective from even younger people. So we need more youth participation in political process. We need to make young people courageous enough to also run for office, even if you're 18, just turned 18, 20 or something like this, go for office, because your voice is important and your ideas are necessary to develop Europe for the future, because the future is the young people's present.
Pandemic has put conference on the future of Europe in the periphery of our attention, but deliberative experiment of EU citizens showed what is the pulse of our youth.
I'm very confident in our youth. I think here at the Conference of Future Europe we see that 1 out of 4 citizens sitting in these panels are the youth, and they are very concerned about their future on issues like climate, but also on intergenerational equity. They really see that our policies are not fair vis-à-vis them, and they want to participate. But they are not satisfied with the electoral process, so they vote less, but they won't participate more. And this is a bit of a tension that I think can give us can offer us an opportunity. If we're able to capture the desire for participation in the youth, we can actually accelerate the process, and Europe could actually be a leader in showing the way, how an issue like the ecology, the climate change could actually become the catalyst for this more meaningful participation of citizens in their daily action, but also in their communities.
But until we catch those drifting away, let us see the trends.
If you look, for example, what just happened now in the United States, where it was the young who rejected the far right, who rejected the Republican Party, the anti-abortionists. So there has been a change. In Europe at the moment, it plays out a little bit differently. If you look at it, amongst Gen Z, the data that I have seen tell us that amongst Gen Z in most European countries, far-right parties were the party they voted most for.
German authorities last year dismantled a huge group of so-called citizens of the Reich, right-wing conspirators who planned a coup and infiltrated high positions within the country's structures, even judiciary. Youth was recruited online. Generation 2024 will be the first one who didn't have a chance to meet anyone who directly experienced horrors of Second World War. Hitler Hitler is becoming social media meme that intertwines with Putin, the strongman riding the bear on TikTok.
Так почему его взгляд не весел? Он не слушает наших песен. Не кури, не бухай, на гантели налегай, будешь как Валуев Николай. Не кури, не бухай, массу тела набирай, будешь как...
Где заканчивается граница России?
Граница России заканчивается через Берингов пролив с США.
Граница России нигде не заканчивается.
While Russian leader is putting out narratives that discredit LGBTIQ community and Western, as he says, rotten values, more and more of authoritarian and anti-human rights sentiments gain ground within European youth. I spoke with Austrian Justice Minister, first ever Minister of Immigrant Origin, about what can be done.
Kako s ovom brzinom, akceleracijom globalnih procesa?
What can we do about the acceleration of global processes in a way old model of education and schooling? And how do we work with TikTok generation, with narratives, with fast changes of our life, economy in digital sphere? What do you talk about in Austrian government?
Kako to kao osoba iz vlade, šta vi pričate u austrijskoj vladi?
To je fantastično pitanje, jer baš je to u stvari ključno.
This is the key question, Minister says. Our life through digitalization is changing so fast, and all the systems in which we function and work, in which our democracy functions, our governments function, are very slowly changing. I think that we are coming to the point of huge frustration because a lot of these phenomena that we see, like social media, especially TikTok, change a lot of things, and we cannot catch it. And we cannot find the right answer, laws which will be there to fight against disinformation or radicalization.
Potrebni za borbu protiv radikalizacije na tim mrežama.
Stop the hate, set up guardrails and enforce them. Many parts of the internet are becoming toxic waste dumps for hate and vicious lies. They are profit-driven catalysts for moving extremism from the margins to the mainstream. By using algorithms that amplify hate to keep users glued to their screens, social media platforms are complicit. And so are the advertisers subsidizing this business model.
In November 2022, Morocco has beaten Belgium at the World Cup in Qatar. After the win, streets of Brussels center were flooded with youth celebrating Moroccan win. All of them Belgians, median age 16. Celebrations turned into riots. A little bit further to the west is Molenbeek, notorious neighborhood from 2015 terrorist attacks in Paris, as those who masterminded that were the brothers from Molenbeek. Ibrahim Usari is a tech entrepreneur from Molenbeek. After the terrorist label given to his part of town, he decided to act.
This idea comes from a little bit my story, because I am the last one from a family of 8. I have a brother judge, two other ones engineer. My sister have a degree from the University of Cologne, and I left school at 13.
Okay, let's repeat. 1-3.
1-3.
Is it usual for people to get out of the school at 1-3?
You know what? Well, I have all the support, academic support at home. I have all the role model at home because my big brother and sister, and I left. So sometimes the academic system is not adapted to everyone. I believe in this. And I discovered the technology by myself, like a little bit self-made man. And when I do this, I start my own company, and I start to work. I hire people, and I finish with 4 companies in tech, more than 20 employees. And for me, technology is really accessible. And I was a little bit a role model from the kids here, the young people from this area. And when I start really to try to explain to these people technology is accessible, they don't believe me. So it's why I want really to create a space where I can prove to these people technology is accessible.
Usari's startup accelerator, Molenbeek, became an instant hit, not just for the kids from Molenbeek, but for the world of tech. CEOs of Google or Amazon came to visit. They were chasing Molenbeek talents. Ibrahim decided that he will never move, in spite of millions on his account. I asked him, how does he explain riots and anger of youth in Belgium?
You yourself, did you experience discrimination?
Of course, every time. And today, yeah, you know, I live in my body, so sometimes every time I don't have a mirror to remember me, I am from Morocco. So I forget.
But you're
I
from
think
Belgium.
I am Belgian.
You're from Belgium.
Yeah, you know, but my skin, my face, so a lot of people look at me like a Moroccan guy, but in my mind I am a Belgian guy, you know. So, yes, sometimes in my life I have some bad experience about discrimination. And I create some reflex about this, like I don't want to go in a new place because I don't know if I can go in this place or not. But sometimes I can say, no, there is no place for you. You know, I don't know. So I develop some habits for not to be confronted in this discrimination. It's why I like really Molenbeek, is because there is no discrimination here. Everybody. You have a lot of diversity, so people, they don't look at you like that, they don't feel afraid about you, you know, and it's something really important when, you know, when you're in the street and someone look at you and take the bag like that, you don't feel really comfortable about this. So, and for the job also, I meet a lot of problems to have a job. Okay, I don't have some diplomas, but also sometimes, you know, discrimination is not don't give you a job. It's more if this person need to choose between one real Belgian person and one Belgian person with different origin, they will choose the real Belgian person. This is discrimination, you know? This is not don't give a job. It's not have the same equal chance.
How do you get the kid who has such grievances to go out and burn car because we know what he feels, we understand that, to kind of, you know, he cannot get to school, but find some opportunity in society like this, and at the end go and vote for someone who maybe represents his interest.
You know what? To be honest with you, I think there is another problem with the young people and the vote. In Belgium, it's an obligation to vote, but the young people, they don't believe really that can change something. So you would need to recreate this trust to the system. And for the moment, it's really complicated. It's really complicated because these young people, they have some experience in their life. They see directly people from politics. They don't understand what is their life, you know. And this is why it's important to work to create this new trust because like that it's really complicated to do something, you know, because they stop to believe in the political, they stop to believe in the system, and they feel really alone. It's complicated when you are 20, 21, 25, and you feel alone, you know. How you can trust your system, your government, your city when you feel alone, because no one understands you.
And that sentiment has a sound.
Ik geef geen fok om ze. Ik ben in de buurt, ik moet hosselen. Politie wil me pakken, speel verstoppertje. Bitches willen plakken, maar we fokken ze.
It's present in whatever language in Europe. Unequal kids of the continent have this sound, most listened on YouTube, nowhere to be heard on radio or TV stations. I stopped in Greece, country that suffered from the last decade crisis, which also reflected on brain drain, demography, youth access to labor market, unemployment. Greek youth used to be very vocal on the streets. I meet Niki Turka, who leads Student Association for International Relations.
How important for youth today is politics at all?
I think that youth disengagement, political disengagement, is a very serious problem nowadays. But on the other hand, I think that after so many crises, we said economic crisis, pandemic crisis, energy crisis, refugee crisis, youth, I think that is active from now on, and they have to be active, otherwise what are we doing here?
How important for young Greek is Europe and European politics? Because we talked, you suffered a lot, but you know, what is Europe and European identity for them? How? Because you know probably that because you talk to a lot of students.
Frankly, I think that we don't have that much faith in Europe anymore, and we witnessed Europe's, closed door after the pandemic crisis. Now we have energy crisis, and we don't know what is going to happen tomorrow. So I think that we don't have that much faith.
Interesting thing is also, we've mentioned that young Greeks can vote with 17,
yes.
But you cannot be elected until you're 25.
Yes.
How come? So, you know,
I really don't know.
Cannot still be elected. You have to wait.
Yes, I have to wait till 25, and after that decide if I want to do something or not. It's a problem, that also. It doesn't make sense, actually, to have the right to vote at 17, and they are actually discussing to lower that voting age. But on the other hand, can't actually be elected till 25.
Mitsotaki's conservative government presented huge educational reform. I spoke about it with Stefanos Gandolfo, Chief Counsel for the Reform of Greek Education Minister.
The big change has been going from a knowledge-centric model to a skills-based paradigm. So instead of focusing on imparting knowledge, which is still obviously very important, what's more important is that students learn that they acquire skills such as critical thinking, collaboration, communication, compassion, and of course a lot of digital skills. So this is something that we've done by changing all school curricula effectively, and also by introducing a new module called the Skills Labs, which focuses explicitly on the cultivation of soft, digital, but also life skills. So also talking about mental health and democratic citizenship, and how does a student protect him or herself, from bad use of the internet and misinformation, or, a filter on TikTok. Like, how do you deal with your self-image as a 14 and 15-year-old, unless someone teaches you that? And, oftentimes parents might not be the best suited to do that. So we've created this program, which is very innovative in a lot of different ways. And this is probably the most popular reform that the current government has introduced in terms of education, and we see it accepted by everyone. And just to a last point to touch on the teacher training, we had a voluntary teacher training program, and we targeted 75,000 teachers, and almost 75,000 of them, almost 100%, participated in the teacher training. And there's something generally that we've done, that everything new that we introduce into the system, it always comes with associated teacher training, and we see that the teachers actually really love it and embrace it.
Je pense que quand tu as des institutions qui nous écoutent vraiment pas, quand on fait des manifestations pacifiques et qui sont déclarées, non, il faut trouver d'autres moyens d'agir pour avoir de la visibilité, quoi. C'est quelque chose qui, là, on n'est pas écouté quand on agit pacifiquement, quand les intersyndicales essayent de rencontrer le président. Enfin, on n'a pas de moyens de pression, quoi. Mais les précaires vont crever, nous on veut vivre, agir sur vivre dignement, vivre décemment, profiter de nos petits-enfants. La retraite à 60 ans, oh, c'est mieux et moins longtemps, nous on veut vivre, nous on veut vivre.
Sve ono što smo radili u interesu
Couple of days before the new year 2021, while the mayor of the city of Petrinja was giving press statement day after the earthquake, which hit the town that used to be important Austro-Hungarian outpost in the fight against Ottoman Empire, another, stronger and much more devastating earthquake struck.
Ovo je bio još jači. Ovo je bio jači od prvoga. 100%.
2 years later, not much has changed. One of the least developed parts of Croatia, that was the front line in the 90s liberation war, depopulated and without any economic impetus, is once again losing its youth. Gymnasium in Petrinja is one of the school's ambassadors of European Parliament. When earthquake struck, they've got a message of solidarity from at that time Parliament's president Davide Sassoli.
In Croazia il liceo Petrinja è stato colpito dal devastante terremoto dello scorso dicembre che ha provocato vittime e danni ingenti in tutto il paese.
Today, these girls are graduating high school and leaving town. Eva wants to study medicine. She's been disappointed again and again, she says to me.
Moraš nekog stalno vući za rukave, ja bi ovo, ja bi ono, ali kad vidiš da si x puta odbijen, dosta ti je. I kad vidiš da te nitko zapravo ne shvaća ozbiljno, ne čuje tvoje potrebe, ne zanima ih, mislim da onda zaista nemamo o čemu pričati.
Even though we live on peripheries, either Europe or humanity as such, our globalized world sometimes surprises us. Bruno Lončarić, young radiologist, became famous throughout global cohorts of Liverpool football fans. When earthquake struck, the only thing he took from his apartment out of the building, which collapsed several seconds later, was a sign from Anfield Stadium. Yours truly was so moved with that, as also a Liverpool fan, that I tweeted about it, and from that moment on, outpour of support came to Bruno from thousands of people around the world. A year later, he was invited to British Embassy in Zagreb, where he received honorary membership in the Liverpool club and the plate of Liverpool with signature of all the players. That was one of the best things that happened in my life, because you know what the slogan of Liverpool says, "You'll never walk alone," Bruno says. But at the end of the storm, young people from fringes of Europe still do walk alone. Is there still a golden sky and the sweet silver song of the lark at the end of the storm we're experiencing?